cigar up.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to Dig on America, the podcast where we cover social issues and history, and we take a look at how they affect us today in America. The Dig on America podcast, for those of you who do not know, is 100% definitely deep state propaganda. We are funded by George Soros, the Clinton Foundation, Jay-Z, and in all likelihood, Monty Burns. Welcome into the show. I am here with Big Hussein. Big Hussein, what is crack-a-lackin' today, brother?
What's going on now? How you feeling, man? How's it been?
I'm feeling pretty good, brother. We got a cool guest on with us today. We're going to talk about.
I know. I'm
We're going
anxious to talk with her.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some tough topics. We're going to fight. We're going to throw shit at each other. But it's going to be a fucking great time. So yes, the show does suck already. Fuck you, Aunt Jerry. We'll see you later. Of course, you're not leaving because I don't know why. I actually don't know why she's not leaving. There is no reason not to leave. Feel better to our boy, Michelangelo Femine, who is a little bit under the weather today, so he will not be joining the show. We hope that he gets well, and then we will talk to him a little bit later. So first, we will introduce our guest. Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to have our first live stream. This live stream is going to talk about a couple of topics, and then after that, after we're done talking about these couple topics, then we're going to stop the stream. We're going to go into, you'll have to join a separate stream. So we'll go right back online almost like 2 minutes afterwards. And then we're going to do our dig on history. And today we're going to talk about civil rights. But for right now, let's get into our guest. Pause. Let's not get into our guest that way, but let's get into the interview with our guest. Welcome to the show, Amber Rose Washington.
Hey guys, how are you? And he's yawning already. Oh my God, this is not a good sign.
Welcome into the show, Amber.
Yes, thank you.
So, Amber, let's, I could introduce you, but it's probably much easier for you to introduce yourself. So if you would, tell the Dig on America audience of hundreds of about four, and you can see there's comments on here saying hello to you already. Hello to Aunt Jera. Hello to Jenna for joining the show already. If you are watching this, by the way, over on Facebook, come on over and join us on YouTube or Twitch. You can find Dig on America on YouTube at youtube.com/Dig on America, or on Twitch at twitch.tv/DOA podcast. So Amber, introduce yourself to the folks. Tell us why you are here. And I guess you're an author. You've written a couple books. So tell us all about it.
Yeah, I'm an author amongst many other things that you'll learn in the next, 2 minutes. I wrote a book this past year about my life. It's a memoir. It's called Hiding from Myself. And as of December, it actually has climbed to number 2 on the bestsellers list. Thank the Lord. I'm very humbled by that. Yeah, I was really humbled by that. I was not expecting the amount of sales that this book would get and the attention it would get. And it's sold in 37 countries right now, English-speaking countries right now, which is pretty fabulous. I didn't expect that. But I come from, I wasn't always an author. I was actually a songwriter, producer, musician, voiceover artist, mentor, and public speaker for my entire adult life. I was brought into the music industry by the vice president of the Grammy Awards just by happenstance. I was at the Hilton Hotel in New York and trying to get a bagel of all things, and Ann Ruckert at the time was the vice president of the board of directors of the Grammy Awards, and I didn't know it, and I met her at a conference, and she said, "Listen, honey, why don't you give me your packet and I'll listen to it. And if I like what I hear, I'll give you a call back no matter what. How's that?" And I was like, "Oh God, who's this old lady that's attacking me here, trying to grab one of four packets that I had to give to producers at the time?" And I said, "Okay." And I sort of like grew, okay, here you go.
You gave it to him grudgingly.
Yeah, and I didn't know who she was. There was going to be a conference with about 1,000 people in the hotel, and
Yeah.
she takes the packet, and this girl taps her on the back and said, "Anne, we really got to get going. Your keynote speech starts in 5 minutes, and we got to get you mic'd up." And I was like, "Oh my God, who was I just talking to?" So I sit down up front, and this guy sitting next to me goes, "How did you get Anne Ruckert to take your packet?" And I said, I didn't. She asked for it. She goes, "You must be the luckiest person in the world."
Wow.
The guy from ASCAP comes out on stage and he says, "Certainly somebody that needs no introduction, except for me, of course. I had no idea who she was." And says she is sitting on the board of directors for the Grammy Awards. She also is one of the co-founders of the Jazz Foundation of America. She's worked with Aretha Franklin, um, just this host of characters from Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, Sting, Madonna, Barbra Streisand, all these folks. And I was just like, I dropped my mouth. I'm like, oh my God, I just gave my packet to the person. Long story short, she ended up loving my stuff. And from that, I went on to do some projects for her in the music business. And from there, it just escalated. So over the past 28 years, I've been intertwined in the music business, wearing a lot of different hats.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a real hoot. I've worked with quite a number of people that you probably know, and I just don't like to name drop because it's kind of pretentious, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a hoot, and all these stories.
I don't like to brag, but I was on Michael Jackson's "Beat It." No.
I don't know Michael. Never did.
Well, you don't know him now.
I don't know him now, especially. Yeah, that would be a bad thing if I knew him now. But you know, so I did that for a number of years alongside of my public speaking journey and education journey. And the one thing that I had to do my whole life in the music business is get over stage fright. And the way I did that is I came up with a method all by myself that I ended up writing about. In fact, it's going to be released in June as my second book in the series, which is How to Overcome Stage Fright. And I was teaching people that were about to go on American Idol how to get over stage fright, because I had done some production. I was working with some guys from HBO. I worked with the cast of The Sopranos and Goodfellas and all those folks. And I produced a show that was sort of an offshoot of American Idol. And you know, it was 5 different states in the northeastern corridor of the United States. And you know, I had to teach these people how to stop singing to the floor. They were so scared. They some of them could sing really good, but they stared at the floor. They were scared to death of people. So I came up with this whole thing on how to get over stage fright. But me, myself, I was scared to death. Now, I wasn't scared to death. You know, I could stand in front of 40,000 people and say, "How y'all doing tonight?" And I've done that before. And it's electric when they scream back at you. Let me tell you something. You definitely don't need drugs. All these people that are taking drugs in the music industry, you don't need it. You just need to hear all those people screaming back at you. And it's just an amazing feeling.
Do you think that some people get jaded and it loses its effect over time?
Of course it does. And there's so much pressure on you. And there's a lot of people in the business that are actually, they take beta blockers. A beta blocker will slow down your heart rate, because if you get nervous, your heart rate will, go too fast. So they take beta blockers before they go on about a half hour before they go on stage. I never had that problem. So I just, I never did drugs and I never did alcohol when I was performing or on stage ever. I always went out raw, and I just enjoyed every moment of it that way. I just feel like I was privileged to be there. I might as well enjoy it, And my stage fright wasn't just getting on stage in front of a bunch of people. It's that I was born with a condition called incongruity. Most people know that as being called transgender, right? So I was assigned male at birth, and I've since completed a transition. I'm called a post-operative transgender woman, and trying to get over that fear is really intense. I mean, getting over fear of speaking or singing or performing in front of 40,000 people is one thing, or even performing in front of 112 million people on TV. That's one thing. But, facing something very personal and something that's affected you your entire life that has a medical explanation to it, it's really hard, because society is very slow to accepting things that they didn't understand before. And we have a long history of that in the United States. And I'm so happy to be on your show because you guys talk about history and civil rights and everything. And really everything that's going on now with transgender people is really what went on in 1964 and 65 with the civil rights movement. When people of color and the Jewish communities got together, and between those two major years with Martin Luther King, his assassination, and the movement itself, we see this repeating itself time and time. It's so exhausting because we did it with the gay community. We're doing it now with the trans community. Now we have the non-binary people, because what people don't realize is that all of these new names that are coming out are all part of the same thing. And what it is it's a construct that we developed in the 18th century in Western culture and North American Western civilization, which is the gender binary. There's no such thing as a gender binary, but we created it in the 18th century to try to dumb things down a little bit, because we all know, if we've studied our history lessons from all different cultures of the world, you have, like, for example, in Thailand, you have a group of people called the Kahui. You have the Two-Spirit, which is the Native American and Central American Two-Spirit individual. You have in Asia and Eastern Europe, you had the shaman. These were all people that exhibited male and female traits, and they were highly revered in their communities. And they didn't fall within an on-off, black or white, forgive the puns, sort of binary 0 or 1 sort of construct. It was more of a spectrum of 0 to 100. And here's a great explanation of this. You ready? So we all know the uber masculine male, right? We all seen the uber masculine male. He loves football. He loves to say fuck a lot. He loves all these.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I see these guys. I never got it, but hey, whatever. There's this uber masculine guy. Then
they say this too.
You're gonna love my nuts.
Oh my God. That's great. And then you have your uber sort of effeminate males. Your more soft side male. Same thing with women. You have women that are kind of uber masculine, and then women that are uber feminine, and it runs the gamut from 0 to 100 on each side of that weighting system. There is no one size fits all man or one size fits all woman, right? Same thing with transgender. What the thing that I'm trying to drive forward with my platform, I've spoken to tens of thousands of people already, which is why I'm in a position that I'm in. I'm blessed to be in the position I'm in, but it's very taxing, right? And the thing is people are, for the most part, understanding, because I have a way of explaining this that they've not heard before. So people that question people that are transgender always go stuff like, well, what about DNA, and what about this, and that's your choice, your decision. No, I'm here to tell people that let's talk about the medical aspect of it, which is why I call it incongruity instead of transgender. In fact, I hate the word transgender. Transgender is kind of not the right nomenclature for what's really happened to me in my life, because I never changed genders. Here's the radical concept. I'm going to say radical just to tease you a little. When you two gentlemen were younger, about 3 or 4, you knew absolutely, without a shadow of the doubt, with no question in your mind, that you were both male and that you were both guys. You didn't know it consciously. You know it unconsciously. It's called an innate sense of self. And it happens in the cortical region of the brain. So you guys knew who you were. You just never thought about it consciously. People that are born incongruent, we sort of have a problem where it becomes a conscious thought process, because it's not jiving. Our brains and our bodies aren't matching up. And here's some medical facts that have come forward in the past decade. A lot of studies have been done by the NIH and other organizations that have shown that, well, we already know this part, right? In gestation, the first trimester, our bodies differentiate along with our reproductive organs. We're all familiar with that, right? So with boys, your gonads, that sort of stuff. So your reproductive tract is differentiated in the first trimester of pregnancy. What we don't know, and now do know and understand in neurology and endocrinology and genomics, is that in the second trimester is when your brain begins to physically differentiate. And when I say that very carefully. So when I say your brain differentiates, in particular, we're talking about the cortical region of the brain. In a female, a natal female has a brain that has a cortical region that is very thick, right? So we know that in the female brain, the cortical region is very thick. In a male brain, it's very thin, right? My brain has a thick cortical region, just like any other female. And that is because for one reason or another, and they're not exactly sure what the mechanism is, although they do know that there's probably in the neighborhood of 19, I believe it's 19 or 20 different chromosomes that make up this process that makes you reject that differentiation. So I end up coming out, let's be honest, there is a male and female brain, but not in the sense that people think, right? There's a lot of criteria that go into that. The cortical region of the brain is what tells you you're a man, you're a woman. It tells you your place in this three-dimensional world that we live in. You're a human being. The innate sense of self. We're self-aware. We are alive. We experience pain. All of these things come together. And when people start to understand that some people are born differently, whereas those things didn't come together, and let's be honest, a million different things have to come together to have that quote unquote perfect baby come out. We all know there's over 100,000 different birth anomalies, but for some reason in America and other places, we seem to get what I call diarrhea of the brain when we put sex or gender in the mix. So you can have anything. You could have infant leukemia, congenital heart defect, cleft palate. You could be conjoined to your twin. You could be born with half a skull. We're perfectly capable of accepting those as birth anomalies. But as soon as you say the birth anomaly has to do with your sex or gender, that's off limits. That's taboo. Sorry. See you later. Thanks for playing.
And I wonder how much of that is tied to religion.
It's almost all of it is. And that's the sad part. I don't want to make people angry, but I'm going to explain who I am. And I'm unapologetic for it. I was born and raised Catholic, and then I was a Christian. And then I sort of had enough after they tried to give me 3 exorcisms. And
wow,
about that in a second. That's a real fucking hoot. You'll love it. You'll just love it. So, I sort of said, you know what? I'm going to really try to understand the Bible. And the way I understood the Bible was this. Let's start with the Quran. I went to Islam's Quran and I got the translated version of it and I read it cover to cover. And I read the Codex Sinaiticus. You know what's funny? Most Christians, they'll just throw verse scripture. They'll throw chapter and verse at you all day, but they don't even know what the hell the Codex Sinaiticus is, and that's where everything comes from, right? And half of that is even missing, right? And then I read the old Jewish texts, and they were translated, right?
It's well over half, by the way.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
and
yeah.
and it's an interesting because that's one of the topics that I love to talk about, and I won't get down this rabbit hole much, but that's one of the there's another I forget if it's K or Q, where it's supposed to be writings of Christ that were used as sourcing for the it's K or Q, I can't remember which letter was used to determine it. There's a lot of rabbinic texts that are thought of as being in scripture that are actually not scripture, that are actually just translations or thoughts on the actual holy scriptures by the early the early Jewish leaders. The same thing with Christianity, etc. And it's people, our producer Mikey, who is generally on the show, he's a pretty devout atheist. I think most of the guys in the chat right now, at least 2/3 of them are atheists. So religion is always something that's very interesting, that when we talk about it, and I know we're not going to get down this rabbit hole, I said, and I promise I won't. Okay. But what my point is that you have 2 different things in my eye. You have God, and then you have religion. Religion is a big fucking problem. And, religion is really something that has been used vehemently and in just a totally what I would call a non-Christian way, though it's actually a very Christian way, but Christian as in the ecclesiastical Christianity, the church Christianity, not the actual sayings of like Christ, more of the New Testament, not counting Paul, who was a huge misogynist.
Right.
But when it comes to like the teachings of Christ, which are supposed to be central to Christianity, none of those things are echoed in what they say to people who are, and incongruent, I guess, is something I'm gonna have to try to work into my vocabulary. I'm still probably gonna throw out transgender here and there, but
that's what it is. It's
but it's really interesting that you say that, because that's something that whenever I'm around Christians, and I'll be around Christians on Friday morning, when I go to a men's group at the church that I'm at, and I spend so much time there trying to deprogram people from these age-old, just oppressive views that have been installed into people since 2000 BC, that it's just ridiculous, and it's appalling, and it really speaks badly on religion. That's why I hate religion. And again, I'm not talking about God here. I'm not talking about Christ. I'm not talking about Muhammad or any of that. I'm talking about organized religion. Yes. And it's not good for you, and it's not good for me. And I have to tell you, I feel terrible about what you probably go through, because like right away, and Big Haas, I don't know if I told you this or not, but right when I met Amber, like you were referred to me by someone, another podcaster, and I reached out to you on Facebook, right? Remember? Yeah. And on Facebook Messenger, and I said like, hi. And then like I texted, like I have 2 teenage daughters who are like super fast texters. By the time I was like writing my next text out, Amber had sent me about 33 messages of like qualifying me to make sure that I didn't want to come on here and rip on her for being trans. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's like, I realized what you were doing as you were doing it, but I also realized, I think, why you were doing it. And because you had to be skeptical of me, right?
Well, I was trolled a lot. I mean, ever since going international, I mean, I've had, between the mainstream media that I've been on and podcasts, I've probably been on better part of 100 podcasts in the past 2 months alone. And I'm talking about 37
countries. Congratulations. You've scraped the bottom of the barrel.
Oh, it's crazy. It's stupid. It's almost like, not to you guys. I actually kind of like your whole format and what you guys do. And I wish you success, but most podcasts out there are really terrible. And
give us an example real quick
of a terrible podcast.
Yeah, like of a terrible experience you had on one.
I never, what's funny is I never had a terrible experience on one, other than me coming from the music business. I knew they didn't know what they were doing. They were a terrible host, or they were just not ready to do what they were doing. They were stiff. They weren't being organic in their conversational habits. And I think organic conversation is fun. And I think your listeners, and I'm reaching out to each one that's listening right now. Do you guys enjoy organic conversation? I think you're going to say yes, because what you just said about religion is what I say in chapter 3 of my book. My whole chapter 3 of my book is called Losing My Religion. It's funny, and it's all predicated on the introduction to my book. So I'm just gonna do this just because it's so funny that you brought it up. I haven't done this yet on a podcast, but here I'm gonna read you 3 sentences from the beginning of the book. Ready? Here it goes. It's the first 3 sentences.
Go ahead.
My whole goddamn book. How the hell did I go from being a shy, do no wrong, and deeply loved child to a grown woman disinvited to Christmas with the relatives? It was just as well, since I was already busy running from them of their plan to giving me a good old-fashioned Catholic exorcism. That's how
inconceivable.
Yeah, so I mean, the beginning of the book sort of grabs you right away, like, what the F is going on? What are they doing to this person? And I have to tell you, my mom, my dad, my sister, my core family, beautiful. They understood my entire life. I told my mom when I was 4. I was 4 years old and my mom didn't understand. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and nobody knew what this was. There wasn't even a word. Transgender was not yet a word.
Right.
And the only word that existed was transsexual or transvestite, right? And none of them fit what I
right. Yeah.
Right. So back then there was no nomenclature for that, but I knew I was different. I didn't understand the difference in anatomy between a boy and a girl at 4 years old. Let's get that straight right away, okay? I just knew I wasn't being treated like my sister was. And I didn't know why, because my brain was physically telling me, you're a little girl, not a little boy. And unless you are part of the 0.7% of the human race that is born this way, you have absolutely no effing way of understanding it completely, because it is a total mind F. Okay. I'm trying
wait, hold on.
You can say it.
You ever been mind fucked before?
All right. It's a mind fuck.
Yes.
You ever been mind fucked before?
Yeah. So, you know,
I'm mind fucking you right now.
I'd be pregnant 40 million times over if I could talk about my mind fucks, right? So the thing about it is that
I love that she's using our term. We're a match made in heaven.
Hey. But you know, a lot
or
of
as Mikey would say, a match made in the cosmos.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people think, you know, inappropriately that it's some sort of mental condition, and it's not. They confuse the physicality of the brain, the physiology of the brain, with mental issues, and they're two different issues, right? Now, there is something called gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria goes, again, on that scale of 0 to 100, and it describes the anguish that you go through for being incongruent. And the American Psychiatric Association, in the DSM, they call it, has categorized it as such, but they've changed it a million times over already, let's be honest. And now they've finally taken it out, because they found out you don't need to have gender dysphoria to be transgender. Okay. So it's really, how much difficulty in society are you having conforming to this gender that you have that you weren't assigned at birth, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people conflate gender and sex as if they're the same thing, and they're not, right? Sex would be related to your genitalia or your reproductive organs, whereas gender is your innate sense of self in the world. Like, that you're not, anything but a human being, and you happen to be a man, right? I happen to know without any shadow of the doubt that I am a human being, and I'm a woman. And if somebody wants to say, no, you're a dude, well, then you have a pretty fucked up version of what you think a dude is, if that's the case. And that tells me you have insecurities, not me. So what I try to explain to people is, listen, I'm a patient girl. I'm not going to get angry with you. It takes a lot, because a lot of people have cognitive dissonance when they try to learn new things. And it just screws the brain over when you try to learn new things.
Don't say.
I do. And let's just put this out there.
Do it all the time.
This is a funny topic, since we were sort of segueing back and forth with religion. Why don't we just go full bore and say, for over 2,000 years? Oh my God! Then
look at that. All the women have come to me all of a sudden. It's amazing. I don't know how that happened.
Oh, son of a...
Hi, girls. How you doing?
Look at what Christianity did, right?
Yeah, get out of here. What the heck's going on here? This is ridiculous.
Christianity took something called leprosy, and it said it was the hand of God punishing somebody for sinning against.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I want to see some cute guys in there. I don't know.
Go ahead, dude.
I mean, I'm looking at Jack Black and someone else.
There he is.
Oh yeah.
Tropic Thunder.
I know.
The black dude, the white dude played a black dude that pretended to be a black.
Oh yeah, hysterical. Oh my God.
What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean?
But look at what we've done. We're still cave dwellers. We for over 2,000 years we were calling leprosy the hand of God punishing someone for sinning against him, and if it wasn't that person, they were paying for the sins of the parent. And then in 1873, a Norwegian scientist discovers that it's a mycobacterial infection, nothing more. It still took 62 years after that for society and religion to concede that indeed it was not the hand of God after all, and that it was just an infection.
What's funny is that in Mormon culture and teachings for the longest time, it was brown skin that was the curse.
Yeah, and you know what? Brown skin, and a lot of people, including that gentleman.
Wait,
that
it's
was
not? What are you talking about? I thought the Mormons were right on everything.
Yeah, them and the Scientologists, right? I don't.
Real man of genius.
Here's to you, Mr. Curse Misinterpreter.
Oh, that's so good.
Gonna watch the Holy Spirit out of you.
Look at all those eyes.
I want to so first of all, you are very fascinating. So being unfascinating myself, I'm going to there's a couple of things that I kind of want to talk to you that I kind of want to get to while we have time. Because honestly, you could talk a fucking lot. Can you imagine, Big Hoss, if Amber was on with Steve Cox?
Oh,
I mean, Steve, when he's on the show, and this is not a diss on you, but obviously you're doing most of the talking, and that's fine because you're probably smarter than me.
That is wonderful because you're so well versed in what you're talking about.
Yes, but Steve does that too.
Well.
And it would be a clusterfuck of just two people talking and no one listening. But you probably would listen, Steve. I'm not sure, but I do like Steve. But it is what it is. But I do want to ask you a couple of questions. The first one that I want to ask, and so let me state my position on incongruity / transgender. I don't have one because I don't know shit, right? Like we had a lesbian woman on the show about a year and a half ago, and outside of that, we really haven't had any representation from the LGBT community. Just real quick, are you in? Yeah, are you in favor of the Q in that? Like, is the Q necessary?
So, do you know what the Q really means?
Well, means weird, because what queer means queer means weird.
No,
right? That's what it means in the English language. So when they called people queers originally, they said it because they wanted to be offensive to them. And the way that I feel about it is, and I could be wrong here, is that they've kind of recaptured that term and put it as the Q. But you also have and just myself thinking about it, and we asked Tucky about this, and she told us that she doesn't like the Q. So I'm guessing this is different for every person. Right. But you have lesbian, you have bisexual, you have gay, and then you have trans. Now I know that there are different subsegments.
You have intersex. You have what's called questioning, which is also called queer. So the Q is actually for questioning or queer. But queer, you are right in one respect that we took that word back. And because there is such a huge, remember 0 to 100? It's actually 0 to 100. So
the Q means questioning?
It can be questioning
since when?
Since forever, honey.
That's okay. I
because we're not immersed in the.
I've never heard that before.
Just for clarification, I'm not immersed in the LGBTQ either. But I just happen to fall in the spectrum because there's the most marginalized group of people in the world is the T inside of those letters, right? Transgender women in particular. There's transgender men who constitute about 42%. And there's transgender women who constitute the rest. And so there's almost as many people assigned female at birth that are actually men as there are people like me. People don't, but yet the stereotype is, oh, it's a dude in a dress, right? That's the bullshit thing that you hear all the time.
And that's one of the things that's one of the questions I want you to answer this question for me, because I honestly don't. I have an idea of how to answer this question, and I know that the answer that Ben Shapiro gives on this is wrong, because when it comes to Ben Shapiro I value his opinion sometimes on policy and stuff like that, and translating the conservative idea of why they agree with certain policy or why they want certain things. I think he's good at that. He's horrible on race, abysmal. It's not even, it makes it hard for him to listen to. And he's even worse on transgenderism than he is on race, which is really saying something astonishing.
Did you know that last week we called him out and I told him I want to debate him?
Well,
you say?
you got to be careful when you do that because he likes to only debate in his
it.
settings where he owns the microphones and
Oh, I
he
know
has
how
the
he works. I'm well versed with Ben
But-
Shit Hero.
But here is what he says. So tell me point out for me that I'm sure there's multiple fallacies in this, but point out for me when he says yes, transgenderism
Let me stop.
is a mental disorder.
There is no such word as transgenderism in that sense. Transgenderism turns it into an ideology. Being transgender is not an ideology. It's a form of the human condition, which also means if you want to talk about ideologies, let's talk about political affiliations. Let's talk about religion. Let's talk about education status and all the other ideologies that are in the world. But when we talk about human beings, are you a straightism? Are you a manism? I mean, what the fuck is he even doing? I mean, if you think about what he's doing, it's sort of the same thing that people that say them transgendered, right? When we used to, when people in the day used to say them blacks or them gays, it was derogatory because you know what you did by doing that? Most people don't understand the English behind it, but you take an adjective, which is black or gay or transgender, and you turn it into a noun by putting the ed after it. And then
they go to war against the noun, which is always amazing.
Now the noun, here's the interesting part. The noun turns you into an object or an it. And that's actually very derogatory to do. So saying it's a mental disorder, let's talk about that for a minute. So we cleared up the transgenderism bullshit. Now let's go to the mental disorder part. This is why everybody that I've met said I would kick his ass in a second, and I call him out in a second. Mental disorder. Let's talk about that for a second. Mental disorder. Yes, it has been in the DSM 3, 4, and 5. It has been classified as a mental health issue. It started out as gender identity disorder, right? So back in the 1980s and 1990s, there was something called gender identity disorder. And that was, your brain is telling you you're one thing and your body is telling you something else. And how are you going to get on with your life about that? And it runs on a spectrum of, I keep saying this, 0 to 100. Any sort of mental health issue runs on a spectrum, right? So
correct.
It is actually in the same classification as people that have anxiety disorder or depression. So by him saying this statement, he just offended 66.2 million Americans. If he's saying transgenderism is a mental disorder because of gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria, gender identity disorder in the DSM and gender dysphoria in the DSM are classified on the same level as anorexia, bulimia, depression, anxiety. That's over 66 million Americans you just offended. He's so easy to tear apart if you just understand his nomenclature. And you know what he doesn't do? What I'm doing right now. I'm not letting you talk, right? He loves to control the conversation, and he won't let you argue back.
Except he talks really, really fast.
Yeah, really fast. All right, next question. Next question.
Big House, jump in for a sec. What are your thoughts on this?
I like she kind of does when it comes to incongruity. I like that term, so I'm going to use it. She does with incongruity and breaking it down in debate and things like that. Kind of what I do on racial issues or social issues. You just kind of break down exactly where they're wrong and how they're wrong, so that in the end there's no way to come back from it. And to just, I just think that for some issues, people's minds are conditioned to close. When it comes to race, and when it comes to the LGBT community, a lot of times people's minds are just conditioned to close. So anything that even seems halfway plausible, like Ben Shapiro's bullshit milquetoast argument up here, where he was wrong from the fourth word in the sentence, those things, people grasp onto it and hold onto it because it sounds viable in order to conform with their belief system or ideology. So it's hard to, I don't know how you say it, decondition a mind from being just an instinctive closing and protection mode of an ideology or
It's the
belief.
ideology that's the problem, is because his, except when it comes to race, I think on incongruity, it's especially true for Ben Shapiro and people like him, that if they give up any ground, they therefore have
Validate.
betrayed their religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and they can't do that. But you stopped me, which is fine. You stopped me a couple of words in, but where I wanted to get to was this particular sentence. So what I'm going to paraphrase this. Saying what he says here is that and this is kind of where I was lost a little bit, and I don't really know, because I kind of see where he's coming from a little bit, but I kind of see where the statement that is challenging him is coming from too, and I'd like your opinion on it.
Go ahead.
When it comes to like speaking out and saying that it's a mental disorder, because that's his opinion. Obviously, he's not a doctor. His wife is. Maybe he should listen to her. But then he'll say, well, yeah, but they banned me from this place because they're saying that I'm calling out for violence, and I'm not calling out for violence. So where are you at on saying that I don't like transgenders and saying that I don't like people who are incongruent and et cetera, et cetera? I don't believe that they're really, I think it's a mental disorder. It doesn't make sense to me, that sort of thing. Is that related to calling for violence, and if so, how do you see that being the case?
So I'm gonna be very clear on this, and I just want everybody to pay attention to this very carefully. Yes, unequivocally, 100%, his statements are dangerous for people like us. Here's why. When you say you're just delusional, you're not real. In other words, we're not real. We're making this up. We're just a bunch of clowns trying to trick men into sleeping with us. You know, that old mythology. There's so much goddamn mythology about us. It's not funny. But when you start using that kind of nomenclature, you are actually calling for violence, because here's what happens. If you look at the records, if you look at the numbers, by the numbers, over the past 4 years especially, what we end up with is the most marginalized group in America is women of color that are transgender. By and large, they are murdered more often than any other demographic, per capita. Now, remember, we constitute 0.7% of the human population. Okay? So when you take these transgender women, now let's talk about these transgender women. Okay, some of them are prostitutes. Some of them are, other sex workers. Some of them are destitute. I wonder why that is. It's the same argument that we have for people of color, where there's not really true equality. We can say there is, but there's not true equality. There's no equity. That's the bigger problem. Equity is a problem. So when somebody comes out and they say, Mom, Dad, or my friends, or whoever, I'm transgender, I've just been hiding it because I've been scared to death to come out, they end up losing everything, including their employment. They become unemployable. What happens when you become unemployable? Right. You end up on the streets. Well, then you get desperate, and then you have to do whatever you can do. So what do? You hustle. So, the problem is testosterone. I'm just going to lay it out there. I'm sorry, guys.
No!
I'm sorry. It's testosterone.
Of course!
If you think about it, there's a lot of insecure men out there. And the thing is that when you take these women of color that are being murdered, they're not just being murdered, guys. They're being ritualistically killed. They're being decapitated. They're being burned alive. There's stuff going on when we look at these different murders. There's just a murder in Pennsylvania. I'm sure you've heard of it. This poor Latinx girl, just 22 years old, was brutally murdered. The police saw what was happening and told the perpetrator to stop. And he was absolutely being brutal. I mean, he was ritualistically killing this person in front of the police. And the police said, stop, stop, stop. And then the police had to shoot him. They killed him, but they killed the girl. She died. And it's really sad because we're a society of stereotypes. That's all we are. And it's a shame because we're all human beings. Whether you're black, We're doing it to the Mexicans now. Look how stupid we are. We're building a goddamn border wall.
Oh, they're all coyotes. What are you talking about? They're
so
MS-13.
Drug dealers, they're rapists, they're
yeah,
murderers.
yeah.
And I guess some of them are fine people.
You forgot socialists.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So I mean, if people like me speak out, and I do, when I decided to come out, to the entire world. I was someone that was afraid my whole life, but being in the music business a number of years, I learned how to control those fears. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to come out to the rest of my friends because everybody kind of knew anyway. I'm just going to come out to the whole world instead. And you know what? I need to fight for the next generation. I'm an older transgender person, and I want the younger transgender people to have a chance. I want them to not have to go through that first puberty that I went through, because it's hell. Let me tell you something. You people that are out there making bullshit laws to block puberty blockers, which by the way have been used for 41 years. Now all of a sudden it's a fucking problem because we had an orange lunatic in office? No. We've been using them for 41 freaking years, and we've been using them really, really aggressively for the past 12 years. I want your audience and you to look up the name Kim Petras, Petras. She has 2 songs in particular. One is called, Icy, and the other one is called Heart to Break. Heart to Break. If you look up these music videos, this is a German girl that got on puberty blockers before she hit her male puberty at the age of 12. And she went through a normal female puberty instead. And this just is proof beyond the shadow of the doubt that if you allow us to go through the puberty we want to go through, you end up being exactly the way you would have been if you were born a natal female in that regard. Instead, you have places like Alabama, Arkansas, and 18 other states now filing reprehensible arguments that these puberty blockers are dangerous and you're abusing these children. Does she look like she's abused? No, she's a model. She does what every girl her age does that's in the pop music industry, and she's fabulous at it. If you hear her voice, which is even more stunning, that'll blow you away because her voice is actually better than Ariana Grande. So there's something to be said about the entire issue of being transgender is it really comes to a head when we hit puberty. That's when all hell breaks loose. Because we're going through it the wrong way, and you can't possibly imagine because you don't have the framework. I'm not shitting on you guys, but the reality is you just don't know what you don't know. When you go through puberty the wrong way, it's the worst possible feeling a human can have because everything is going backwards and there's no undoing that. And the way to undo that is through painful processes that you do for the rest of your life. Electrolysis. A lot of women have electrolysis, but let me tell you something, my sisters. When you're born and assigned male at birth and you have electrolysis, it's 10 times more painful because your hair follicles are thicker. And we go through painful electrolysis for the better part of 2 years, spending anywhere up to $20,000 to get it done. We have to go through a puberty twice. We are part of the population that gets to experience the fucking hell of puberty, not once, but hey, you get it twice. Buy one, get one free, right? The second puberty for me was... Ay, caramba! Yeah, it was absolutely fun. I loved the second puberty. It worked out wonderfully for me. I was still at an age where the secondary sexual characteristics kicked in and I was able to get them. I know what you're talking, you know what I'm talking about. And my voice was, you may not know this, but there's a guy that's named, he died. His name was Hal Douglas. He was the guy that did In a World, those movie trailers.
No, I don't know who that is, but go ahead.
You do. You know who he is.
I might know who it is, but by name I don't.
So he did all those movie trailers in the 90s and 2000s and Optimus Prime sort of stuff, like I am Optimus Prime. The guys that do those voiceovers. My voice was deeper than that. It was really, really uber like I could announce with no problem a monster truck rally. Seriously. This is my voice. I'm not like putting on a fake voice. This is my voice. I wake up with this voice. And this is just how it ended up, after transitioning, how it ended up. But, if I didn't have to go through that first puberty, I would have been a lot better off in the first place,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So there before we stop talking about this, and again, I don't really want to, but we do have clocks. But there's one more thing that we want to talk about, and it's really the main reason why we wanted to have you on the show. Haas and I are both of the opinion that I think both of us are 100% in for, and I'm going to call them trans rights for lack of a better term. You might have a better term for me to use in the future.
That's
But but the, you know, treat people as people. What you do doesn't affect me. It's you know, that's what libertarianism basically is all about. But when it comes to sports, and this is in the news because you know, the Biden administration had signed some an executive order on their first day in office. I was going to go into that, but we don't really have time to do that now. But everyone can look up the Biden executive order on transgenderism, or on trans. I just stole Ben Shapiro's term. See, he's getting into my head on the transgender legislation that was signed. And it wasn't all really a transgender legislation, but that was part of it. But they also was a lawsuit in Connecticut, I believe it is, where it has to do specifically with sports. And Haas, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both of us have said in the past that we're not really for transgendered women taking part in sports with women.
Depends.
Because like if Amber were to play in the WNBA or something of that nature, because it just, Haas, I think what you had talked about was like the hormone levels and things. Expound your argument, and then
hold on a second though. See, because it depends. Because I've been privy to get a little bit more information, and I'm sure Amber will correct me if I'm wrong.
That's why she's here.
That's why.
Yeah,
but I was speaking about sports and how the hormones, you know, don't get down to the levels of women, and I believe I was corrected because someone told me that after being on the hormones for a certain amount of time, you actually do fall to those levels that are right around a cisgender or biological woman's levels. So for me, I've modified, because that's what mature people do on the basis of new information. I've modified my position. If you are a transgender woman and you have taken the hormones to get yourself down to those levels of a biological woman, then those things help to change your biology. They change your muscle mass. They change things like that a little bit. So it's a more level playing field. But if you are a transgender person, a woman who has not gotten to those levels, and you're running track or boxing or this or that, then I think that there should be a time where you want to compete in these sports, that's great, but let's do the right things and get you to the levels so that the playing field and the competition level is that of a woman versus a woman, you know.
Yeah,
and I might be wrong in that.
Well, let me just real quick add to it a little bit. For me, it's not even about because the right wing right now is using this and they're using it with poor motives, but they're using it to say, oh, look, these poor women, you know, the left is so contradictory. I thought there was no such thing as gender, et cetera, which is obviously nobody says that. But they'll say, well, they're taking away from women by giving, you know, these gold medals and these championships and stuff like that to men. Now, obviously, their problem is they're not recognizing these people as women, which is what I believe that you are. I see you as a woman. But I do have some concern when it comes to safety, especially for someone who may not be on the, you know, have the testosterone and estrogen levels that would be in line with someone yet, where, you know, even when it comes to basketball, you know, clearing out, or, you know, boxing, MMA, wrestling, you know, that sort of thing. I think that it's, there's a reason that I don't know what the reason is, but men who run track faster than women who run track. So I can see that could be a little bit unfair if someone just decided to
Can you cite your evidence
go
on
right
that
away.
for me?
Cite what evidence?
That men run faster on track than women.
Well, the Olympic times.
No, here's the problem with that argument.
Okay.
A lot of transgender women have been trying out for the Olympics for the better part of 20 years.
Mhm.
Never in the history of the Olympics has a transgender woman made it to the Olympic team, on the women's team, no less. There's never been a transgender woman that even qualified to be on the Olympic women's team, but here we are having a fucking argument about how
I don't think that you were allowed. I don't think that you were allowed to be, though.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
No, I think that, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that our society was allowing that to happen.
No,
like it's not saying that it could happen, but it did happen in East Germany.
No. The Olympic Committee, which is an international board made up of America and the rest of the countries, came up with a strict doctrine that came from the medical community of the WHO, the NIH, and a whole series of other huge medical organizations around the world that came up with criteria for that. In the history of the Olympics, I just want to be clear about this because there's a lot to break down in this argument.
Sure.
In the history of the Olympics, there has never been a transgender woman that's been able to even make it to the women's team. So here we are. What the right is doing is they're saying, boo-hoo, women, boo-hoo. We're women too, okay? Women come in all shapes and sizes, and guess what? Some women have a shit ton more testosterone in their bodies than other women because everybody's hormone levels are different. All men, by the way, have testosterone and estrogen in their bodies. All women have testosterone and estrogen in their bodies, but they're just at different levels. So being that we just conquered this one piece, which is the Olympics, there's never been a transgender woman athlete in the Olympics because we've not even been able to qualify. In other words, the cisgender, the natal females have beat the shit out of us every time to get there, and yet we're having some fictitious, mythological argument about how transgender women are kicking ass everywhere. Now, here's the second part of it: the NCAA. Now, you can't.
Well, I do want to rebut that, but I want you to finish your point.
Yeah, there's never been an Olympic woman that's been on the Olympic team.
True.
Period. Can we talk about that?
Sure, but I'm not sure that that's the answer to the question.
No, I know. I just want to clarify
because no, I'm not saying that there was.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that I'm talking specifically right now in like high school and that sort of college sports.
Yeah.
However, what I was talking about when you said when you asked me where am I getting my evidence from, what I was referring to, and maybe we had a miscommunication there, was that men are physically faster and stronger than women are. And my evidence for that is, the world record for a man is far shorter in time than the world record for a woman, like 2 seconds. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't women who are faster than men. Obviously, there's a spectrum for both, but those spectrums tail out time-wise in slightly different areas where the top speed for a man might be, I don't know, I'm just going to throw a number, like 21.2 miles per hour. The top speed for a woman ever might be like 19.8 miles per hour. Now, these are still way more than my 3 miles per hour, but in every single one of these sports, like the track and field type sports, men are able to throw further. That's why we have different divisions.
It's a bullshit argument.
How
it is
great? Just tell me why it's a bullshit argument. I'm totally open to that.
If men are supposedly faster than women, if you take a man that's 5'6" and you take a woman that's 6'2", which exists, right?
Then the woman would be stronger.
On the same track, that woman is going to beat his ass every time.
Sure.
Right?
But we're talking about the elites.
So hold on. But that, what I want to do is I want to break this down systematically, and I think we're very close. The first thing I want to answer Haas's question first. His question was more of, when it comes to hormones. Within the second month of me taking hormones, my levels were in a cisgender range within 2 months. So in other words, I went from a testosterone level, right? Most men would have craved my testosterone level. It was over 700. That's freaking like, that's out of this world huge. Like I could stare at somebody and get them pregnant sort of high, right? So I know it's funny. So the thing is within 1 month, that was down to under 30, and then 20, and then 10, which is even lower than a cisgender woman's testosterone level. My estrogen level shot way up, right? So my estrogen levels were anywhere between 130 and 260, right? And these numbers may not mean anything to you, but to any woman, they understand that these are typical ranges for female hormones, depending on where you are in life. If you're a pregnant woman, obviously your hormone levels are going to be through the roof. And during parts of our cycles, I don't unfortunately get a cycle like that, not in the same way that a natal female does, in other words. But when you're getting your period or when you ovulate, there's changes in the hormonal cycles. But what we're talking about with sports is a matter of losing muscle mass and losing bone structure, which happens. You get body fat redistribution. Your muscle actually melts right off your body, right? My muscles are gone. And what they found on the Olympic Committee, they started with 1 year and then they moved it up to 2 years. They said, we need about 2 years for someone to be on hormone therapy to be in the same range and muscle mass as their female counterparts. The NCAA, by the way, the National Collegiate Association, actually follows suit with that. And for the past 12 years, transgender women have been able to compete with no issue whatsoever. Not one single issue has happened in the collegiate sport arena having a transgender woman compete collegiately. The problem that we're getting to, and which is now I'm going to get to Jason's point, is that high school students, if you have a transgender girl that is going through the wrong puberty, that's going through a male puberty rather than a female puberty, now we have an issue. Okay, I get you. This is where I'm shocking you because at first I bet you thought I was going to disagree with everything, but I'm not. The issue is twofold. On one end of the spectrum, we're eating our cake and we're having our cake and eating it too, sort of thing. Whereas we're saying, we don't want you transgender people in this. You should have your own league. That's bullshit because there's a multitude of things that go into defining someone's sports. I had someone in my little tiny community in Liberty, New York, who was a baseball pitcher. And you know what happened? The parents were so into this, they got that person a professional athlete to train them to pitch from a very young age. And they kept spending money on doing this more and more and more. And this person went on to the minor leagues. That was my computer, by the way. I'm so sorry. And they went on to the minor leagues because they had a skill level and they were taught by someone that was far, far above any coach they could get locally. So they learned a skill that not many people could get. I point to people to the aclu.org. There's an article that breaks this down with the fact and the myth behind transgender athletes. And it shows all of the medical organizations' findings. This is the important part to embrace. All of the medical organizations have findings now that show conclusively this is what the real thing is, and this is the mythology that's being pushed by right-wing media and the right. And the reality is 99% of what they're talking about doesn't hold any weight. Now you have those same places, 20 states trying to outlaw puberty blockers, like I said before, that were being used for 40 years and very strongly for 12 without issue until the orange monkey came into office and screwed everything up. Now all of a sudden you all have a thorn up your ass about puberty blockers. Stop. We are who we are. We don't want to go through the wrong puberty. And you know what? No parent can decide who a child is. Only the child can. And you know what? Some children do go through phases. I get it. But if you're truly transgender and it doesn't go away, you have to try to protect that child because you know what? The life they're going to have by trying to say, think about it this way. The only reason we have a stigma about transgender people is because we went through the wrong puberty. Our facial features change. Our voice gets deeper. We get body hair. We get facial hair. We get all this other bullshit that comes along with the wrong puberty. And then we judge a book by a cover, and then we laugh at that person. They become a caricature of a human being. If we let people go through puberty the natural way, the way they're supposed to because of the way their brain is functioning, i.e. puberty blockers, which I want to give a shout out to, I think it was, oh my God, I forgot which one of your people. It was either Aunt Jur or Jenna. One of the two of them have put an outstanding post out there about the difference between that. I think it was Aunt Jur, that people don't understand the difference between, that one, between puberty blockers and hormones. Very, very well said. I have to tell you. The thing is we don't want to go through puberty the wrong way. And they're trying to block that. And it's indiscriminate because basically you're saying, you're left-handed. We want you to write right-handed. Look at all in the 50s, all the people that were left-handed that got their hands smacked by the nun saying you're not allowed to be left-handed because, left-handed people are less intelligent than right-handed people. And they're actually more prone to evil acts because Jesus sits on the right hand of the Father and you're left-handed. That's the sign of the devil. So,
I knew it. I knew there was something about you.
I'm left-handed, by the way.
I knew. I knew it.
Big
Surrounded by heathens.
Bring it to me, Big Hans.
Habitually, he's a habitual line stepper.
So I hope I clarified some of that.
Yeah, and I think that's like the audience loves to tell me when I'm doing things that are wrong. So actually, here it is. I'm digging a hole. Please stop. But I'm not going to stop because that's not what I do. But the
shovel's not the logo for nothing.
Right. I think that when you talked about the part that I was originally trying to get to, that I'm somewhat glad I almost was kind of hoping that you would disagree with me because I don't feel like the argument that I want to make is foolproof. What I feel like is that it does make some sense because we know that until so I want to rephrase what you said and see if I'm understanding correctly, because it sounds like what you said was that if the person has gone through the transition, from a hormone standpoint and gone through those appropriate measures and has, the estrogen and testosterone and whatever other chemical levels that are, more in line with those that would be, that they would have had they been born into the gender that they identify with and had not gone through the puberty of the sex that they are not. That once that is done, then, or at least has been started and, the chemicals are starting to work, but until that point in time, there is a concern, at least on some level. Is that an accurate assessment of what you said?
No, unfortunately, it's close though. I'm so sorry. I don't.
No, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
So clarify for me what it was.
Let me
just give it to him.
Let me clarify just a little. He's not that far off, but I mean, he is in his own little way, and that's okay. It's okay because we all learn something new every day, and I embrace that, and I learn stuff every day too. So the thing
I love how Big Haas is pretending that he knew all along. Shut the fuck up.
I didn't say that.
Hey.
No, unlike you, I'm sitting here listening, and you just keep trying to talk. Shut the fuck up.
I don't think I've talked for 6.5 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Okay, but no. I don't like that. No, but I'm trying to understand what your point. This is why I wanted you to be on the show.
Yeah.
Because my opinion is not particularly important in this. But as someone who wants to be, allied with you guys, why it's kind of silly for me to just say what comes to my head because I don't have a doctorate in this type of stuff. You know what I mean? So
let's just take this for the metrics that it's really built upon. Okay. It's not just like everybody tries to make things into binary issues. Like it's about muscle mass or bone structure. Those are binary issues. Being transgender itself is not a binary issue. There's so many things that go along with it. And let me give you a couple examples that'll show you. In high school sports, let's take transgender people out completely. Let's not even talk about them for the next 1.5 minutes. And you can time me. When you take transgender people out of this, we find that both boys and girls that are bullied in school, just regular cisgender boys and girls that are bullied in school, perform a lot weaker than their counterparts that are not bullied. We also find that children that are psychologically damaged from a different type of bullying, which is verbal bullying. And I like to term it this way: people that are discriminated against, repressed, persecuted, profiled, bullied, and verbally assaulted, physically assaulted. And even though in high school it's more of a metaphor, but death threats, right? And a lot of kids in high school that are coming out are getting these exact things happening to them. And what we find from a psychological standpoint is that these people perform far, far less, and they are at a big disadvantage to their counterparts, no matter what sex they are. And we have found in high schools that what we see hitting the mainstream media, and when I say mainstream, I mean the right media, okay? When we see these cases come out where some of these parents are pissed off, what we see is these transgender people dominating. We hear about dominating athletes, like the bicyclist that dominated and broke records.
Right.
But we didn't hear about the 96, I'm going to say that word again, 96 times that she lost. 96. Let me drill that into your heads again. She lost 96 races and she won 3. And we only hear about
The 3 wins, right?
3 wins. It took her a shit long
protests that get violent.
Yeah.
98% are fine, and then the 2% that turn to violence,
yeah,
are getting publicized, and then they don't even talk about the fact that it might have been outside agitators in the 98% of those 2%.
Absolutely. God bless. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
True. That's so true. And so what I want to break down is the human condition. And you can't base your argument solely on the bullshit of well, your bones are bigger, or your lungs are bigger, your legs are fatter, or your voice is deeper, or whatever the bullshit of the moment is. I understand that people are afraid of stuff they don't understand, and they think that all sorts of hell is going to break loose. But let's consider 2 things first off. Number 1, transgender people constitute 0.7% of the population. That's less than 1%. That's still a lot of people, but it's not that many people, okay? Number 2, we are at a disadvantage because systemic bullying is still going to carry on for the next 100 years at least, because human beings, by their very nature, work at a very snail's pace when we learn new information. So their parents are going to be teaching hate to their kids, and their kids are going to be teaching hate to their kids, and so on and so forth, until that cycle is broken. And the way you break the cycle is you call out the nonsense right from the beginning, and you start giving them undeniable, irrefutable facts on this information. And it's so sad because we're still in a generation where we're learning all of these things. But what we do know from a scientific standpoint, and by the way, I gave you one, but there are several studies that have been done, including from the NIH, the World Health Organization, the Olympic Committee, that covers this whole high school adolescent sort of deal, which is really where the argument is. The reason, Hun, that I brought up the other one, I hope you don't mind me calling you Hun. The reason I brought up the other one was because people conflate the Olympic athletes and the professional athletes with this issue, which is really the high school sports. They think it's an all or nothing sort of thing, and they turn that whole issue into a binary issue, which is why I took it down a different road to begin with, because I needed to clarify for those people that conflate these issues that anybody that's been on HRT for 2 years plus, we've lost our muscle mass, our body fat has redistributed in our bodies, and our frame, I'm a candidate for osteoporosis because my bones are breaking down, right? So this is what happens to transgender people. It's the unsung thing that you don't hear about, and it's because they don't want you to hear these people, these sensationalists don't want you to hear.
No, they do. I do hear it. And I'm going to just real quick.
Oh, good.
I've heard it as, I don't even want to say this because it's so repulsive.
Oh.
It's the same idea that Hurricane Katrina was brought on by the wrath of God because of the sins of New Orleans. as sort of an anecdote there. But that's sort of the same reasoning that I have heard from people's mouths that I know. Luckily, no one in my family this time. But I have heard that, and it is the stupidest shit that I have ever. I don't even. Anyway,
Yeah,
go on.
I just, I think people need to start doing 4 little letters. And I think America could serve itself really good by doing this, because we are so divided, and quite frankly, we've been divided long before for that guy that was in office, and we're going to be divided after that, because, listen, Lincoln had the Emancipation Proclamation, but did that kill systemic racism? Fuck no, it didn't.
No, and
In
we'll
our
talk about that right now.
we'll get into all that. But
Yeah.
the last thing I'll say about all of this is that there are, if you go out there and look at all the medical establishment literature and the scholarly articles that are out there about this, there's a multitude of information and studies that have been done to try to squash some of this stuff. We're not purposely trying to squash it for an agenda. We're trying to show that people learned 8th grade biology and they think that's all there is to it. That's why we still have these knuckleheads out there saying, you're XX or you're XY, and when somebody finds you dead underground, they're going to identify you as a male. Okay, I don't give a shit what they identify me as after I'm dead, you bonehead. I want to feel congruent. The whole thing with me is affirmation of who I am as a human being, and to get through this journey, alive. And that's all it is. I'm not hurting anybody, and nobody's ever hurt, I never asked for this to happen. I didn't want to be born this way, but I was. And some people don't want to believe that. That's your problem. That's not my problem. And I want to show the world that I'm unapologetic for it. And I have unwavering determination to sit out there in front of the whole world and put myself out there and say, listen, I'm not a bad person. I've done a lot of good in my life. In fact, one of my goals in my platform is do something good for somebody, right? I wrote a whole article on this that went viral, and it was basically me walking up in Tampa, up in a place called Ybor City. I was walking to Burger King.
Oh, that's right. You're from Tampa, right?
Yeah.
You're from Tampa?
I'm not from Tampa, but I live here now for the time being.
The home of like a million strip clubs on Dale Mabry.
And also, Ybor City is one of the cigar capitals of the world.
Yeah, it
Tampa
was. Ybor City. Ybor City is basically Bourbon Street of Florida. It's the New Orleans version of Bourbon Street. It's a really fascinating place. It's a wonderful place to visit.
I reviewed a cigar from a maker that's based in Ybor City.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place, and that was that was really the birthplace of the American cigar. If you want to get technical, there's just so much history there. But living, I don't even know what the hell my point was. I lost it.
No, that's okay. The what you've said today is like really astonishing, and I'm glad that you clarified. Because I will but I'll apologize for when I brought up the Olympics, what I was not doing, I think I was answering a different question than what you were asking. You were I believed you were asking, what is the evidence that men are faster than women? Just in a general sense. That was the question I thought you had asked. Not it had nothing to do with transgender or incongruency in any way, shape, or form. I thought you were challenging me on where's my evidence that men run faster than women do. So that I think is where we went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And I mean, we can go back and play the tape, and that's it doesn't matter. I probably misunderstood what you said. And then you heard my argument and thought I was arguing something that I was not arguing. So I think that might be what it is. But nonetheless, we do got to move into our next segment. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the humidor real quick, and then we're going to stop this stream. We're going to pee, and we're going to come right back on in like 3 minutes. So Haas, you got 6 minutes. What are you drinking? Wait, hold on. Cue the music. Big Hussein, what are you drinking? What are you smoking? On Haas's humidor.
Only got 6 minutes, so I'm going to get right into it.
Yeah, we're putting the clock on you these days. Amber, he'll go for like 6 hours.
No. Wait a minute. In all fairness, we usually have people asking questions as we're going through the humidor. Teacher. Exactly. So we're gonna get back to the foundation, how this humidor started off. So today I am reviewing, and I'm smoking on a great, and this is like a double humidor because this is a great bargain cigar as well. And it's pretty flipping good. And you're going to love the name. This is the Fighting Cock.
Pause.
So, and as you can see, it's got a nice little
You're gonna love my nuts.
Crack-a-lack-him.
This is a great. I like this cigar a lot. I did not have high expectations for the cigar because I did know that it was what they call this an EDC, an everyday cigar, because of the price point. But it's a quality cigar that you can buy at a price point that you can smoke them every day and not feel guilty. You know what I mean? It is a
The price is wrong, bitch.
Oh, the price is right for this motherfucker. I'm telling you that right now. The wrapper is a Habano wrapper, Habano seed, but it's grown in Nicaragua.
Nicaragua.
So, you're gonna get to that. You're gonna be able to say that in about 2 seconds because the filler is
From Nicaragua.
that's right, and it's entirely handmade in Nicaragua. As you can see, it's got a kind of a golden brown
I
wrapper.
once had a hand job in Nicaragua.
Okay. You know, this hue right now, it reminds me of how tan Rocco gets in the summertime. This is how he looks in the summertime. And that's a weird comparison.
That is quite strange. Yes.
That's what it reminded me of, Rocco coming out of the pool in the summertime around the end of July. So he's had a good 2 months to bake out in the sun. He looks like this. Lucy actually gets darker than Rocco, which is funny. But anyway, it's very mellow, but it's a medium type of cigar. Okay, it's got Nicaraguan long fillers, and guess what? For being such a cigar at such an attractive price point, it is pretty complex in its nuance. I mean, it's a little creamy, pause, a little oaky, got a little bit of coffee with it and some pepper, but not a lot of pepper. It's not over peppery. I like the fact that I sat it down for about 5 minutes, picked it up, and it was still lit. But then I sat it down for like 7 minutes and it was done. I had to touch it again. But I didn't have to like sizzle it to get it to relight. I just had to touch around the edge, and it relit pretty well. It's pretty consistent. It's not getting too bitter. As you can see, this is a Toro, which is about 6.2 inches. Pause. By, I want to say 52. Yeah, 52.
52?
Yeah, 52 ring gauge. 50 or 52, something like that.
Ah.
6 by 50. That's what this is. This is a Toro. And I'm about 3.5 in. Pause. And it's still the
You are
flavor
fake news.
and nuance that I've gotten from the beginning has not changed much towards the end. And usually, as you get towards the end, it kind of gets a little bitter, gets a little more earthy, I guess. But the draw is real nice. Now, this is a very smooth one. As you can see, it doesn't have much veinage. You know, it's got a little vein on it, but not too much on the wrapper. It's pretty smooth, which is cool. You know,
What are you pairing that bad boy with
I
tonight?
paired it with. I went with the Jack Daniel's single barrel proof.
Old
Pretty good.
Old reliable.
Pretty good drink. But then I mixed it. I made a mixed drink. So then I brought out Old Faithful, the Sprecher ginger beer. So it's about 2 fingers of Jack, and then the rest I filled up to just to here. I didn't top it off, but I kind of filled it to here with ginger beer, and I had a lot of ice in it. And the ginger
Is that a sweet ginger beer, or is that more of a bitter ginger beer? I haven't had the Sprecher.
It's not sweet per se. It brought out a little bit more sweetness here, but it brought out some spice too because it does have Like sometimes I will drink this and the ginger essence will get up in my nostrils and I will freaking it'll burn a little bit.
I've had a couple
It's
of
got
those ginger
it's got
beers
some
where it's
bite
like,
to it.
yeah, super gingery ones. I don't like
Yeah,
those.
yeah, it does have
Yeah.
a lot of ginger, so it added some spice to the cigar. Uh, the Jack Daniels brought out a little bit more of the oakiness, you know. So it definitely added some the drink. You know, I just kind of threw it together because I initially wanted Jack and Coke, but I got down here, the fucking kids drank up all my Cokes. I gotta put some more Cokes in the fridge down here. But I wanted Jack and Coke. My backup was Jack and Ginger, and it turned out to be a really good pairing for this cigar. Um, when I talk about the price point, you can get a box of 20. Listen to me now, of the Toro for $40. 20 Toros for $40, 6-inch by 50. That's a pretty hefty cigar. You can get the Robusto for like 35. Okay. Could definitely smoke these every day, not feel guilty, and almost feel like you're smoking on one of the super premium brands. So I give this a 4.25.
A
It's not as
4.25.
yes, and that's only because it's not as full strength profile as I would like. But I could definitely I can work this pause every day if I wanted to.
All right, so there we go. 4.25. And the name of that cigar one more time.
The Fighting Cock.
I love the Fighting Cock. All right, in fact, that's going to be my name from now on. Jason Dutch, the Fighting Cock. Just real quick, we're going to end this stream, and then we'll be back with Amber again. The one thing real quick though, you had mentioned something real quick earlier, and Jenna had said this about what I had said about when I made that analogy about Katrina. And early on, I was going to mention something, but I didn't want to interrupt you. When you were talking about like how, you know, you were sort of how trans folks, you mentioned something about the, you know, the development in the womb, that sort of stuff, I think early on. The other day, actually, there was, I believe it was on Prager, who just loves propaganda, brought that up as a pro-life argument, saying that, look at the left, because of course you are the left, because, you know, you're just the left, that you're proving that life starts at conception. So just something else for Jenna to get angry at, because that's obviously has nothing to, even if that is true, it has nothing to do with the life versus independent life argument that I subscribe to myself. So, all right, Amber, thank you. You will be back with us in a second, right?
I will absolutely be back. I can't wait for the next part.
So we're going to be back. We're going to talk about kind of about the civil rights era, and then one quick news story before we get out of here for the day. So look for the news stream in a few minutes. Thank you for watching. If you're only watching this stream and you're going to go to bed or take a shit, you can find us. If you're not watching on YouTube, you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/dig on America, twitch.tv/DOA podcast. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/dig on America. You can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/dig on America. And you can donate to the show. Thank you for Jenna, who is a patron, Gordy, who is a patron, all the other patrons that we have on the show. And again, if you get us up to $100 a month, I think right now we're in the 50 range. You get us up to $100 a month, we will give 1/3 of our Patreon every single month to Wounded Warrior or Doctors Without Borders, or maybe we'll let Amber throw a charity in there for us too, because we, we can always use new suggestions on that. So get us to 100, and we will give 33 of that every month to a good cause. So you want to, not only will you help a shitty podcast, you'll help a not so shitty charity. We'll be back in 3 minutes.